trees towering over us, they stand as guardians at the perimeter of civilization. There's a randomness to nature, a random order. Learning that order helps us understand the randomness. I think it's important to learn the rules, because you have to learn the rules before you can break them. And breaking the rules is what creates that randomness. So let's learn the rules.
When I get in trouble, I always refer back to the number 3. There's some sort of magical power for me in the number 3. And so I'll discuss how I look at the number 3, the 3 points, and the rule of thirds. Both of these concepts are used in photography and art, and have been for a long time. And that's kind of where I fall back when I get into trouble. So when I was having a hard time constructing a tree and getting the dimensions right, this is where I turn to. And I use this rule even when I was designing scenery or making buildings or whatever. So I always go back to these rules. So you can apply this to more things than one. So I'll go over the basic principle, and then I'll show you how I apply this to bending the wire to give the tree a realistic three-dimensional look. So the first thing I did was I made a vertical line. This is approximately 9 inches, but the size really is irrelevant here for this demonstration. And then I cut it into 3 parts, and I put 2 horizontal lines. So it's cut into thirds. This is where you come in with the rule of thirds. Then I took the top half of that third, and I cut that into thirds, and then I took the very top, and then I cut that into thirds. So I made smaller lines so you could see where that goes. So then I stacked 3 triangles. So these are 3 equal triangles stacked on top of each other. Now, if you remove the horizontal lines, you're going to end up with this.
So what you see is a very linear but very organic shape, and it breaks down into thirds basically. And this is how I form the structure for basically where my first trunk will start, my branches will start. So if you're looking at this as a tree, but it could also be the branches, smaller branches, a sapling. If you follow this basic pattern, you'll always get a very organic looking result. So again, this looks very robotic. It looks like it was made in a factory, and you certainly wouldn't want to make every tree like this or every branch like this. But this is the format. And then from here, if you understand this principle, then you can make different shapes, different trees. But again, it's understanding the rules before you can break them. You have to learn scales before you play the blues. And that's the principle here. So this is the format that I use, and it works for me. And I'm going to show you how to apply that to using this on the pigtail to bend the wires into a final tree. So I'm going to do 3 different trees, and we're going to start with the Melaluca, which is a Florida plant. Well, actually, I believe it's not a native plant to Florida. It's actually an invasive species, but they're everywhere. But it gives us a format for a very linear trunk, and a lot of them grow together in like a small grove. But you can see here, the trunk forms almost at the root, or it can form, or splits off very low, and it'll can have a single or multiple trunks. But it's very vertical, with very short horizontal branches. So that's the basic principle that we're going to do first. And here I kind of drew the 3 different ones. This is a very crude illustration of a Melaluca, a oak, and a pine, which I'll reference this drawing a few times. But you can see the branches are very vertical.
All right, so I had to switch to a light background so we'd be able to see a little bit better. Okay, so the first thing, so this was going to be the Melaluca. So we're going to want to split the branches or the trunk's at the very bottom, the very base. We're going to start there. So we're going to take this and roughly split it into thirds. You don't have to count the branches because we want some randomness. We don't want every bit of it to be the same. So once you get them split, then you're going to twist. And again, we're going to reach for the rule of thirds here and use that as a guideline as to how far we twist till we start our branches. But this is the beginning. This is how it starts. This gives us the feel of where we're going to end up. Now this does get tedious, and you know, it does take a little bit of strength depending on how big you're making your trees, and your hands will get tired. And if you're not used to, you know, doing this, it's a little rough. Your hands will get a little bit tender. You might have to take a break. Okay, so see where we're at, right? We've got basically like a pitchfork. So don't get too concerned about the space here, because if you have to, you can always let out some of the base to shorten the trunk. You really can't twist down, so make sure whatever your tree you're making, you leave yourself enough space there, because this is we'll cut this and this will become the roots. But you can let some of this out. If you wanted this close to the roots to start closer to there, you would just unroll that to here. You can always deal with the roots and you can clip them off if they're too long. But that's where you want to start for there. And then you're going to choose where your branches are going to start. So that's number one.
Next, we're going to look at the live oak, Florida oak. This has these trees are crazy. They grow everywhere. And if you've ever seen like beautiful live oaks, they really grow everywhere. But they're vertical but wandering trunks. So you can see I've already broken the rules here because there aren't 3 trunks of anywhere. It's basically splits into 2 and then 4. But it works here. And again, it's just knowing the rules so you can bend them. But you see they end up with very long horizontal trunks. It's a very wide canopy, short and wide at times. And this is kind of how the trees split. They'll split at the same spot, but they can split into 5 trunks or many trunks.
Number 2, we will do the oak. So you can see the oak, I've made a little bit thicker. Right, this is a little bit thicker. I used more wire for this one because oaks have a lot of branches. So again, we're going to leave it a little bit further, because if you look at most oaks, you get a point where there's a good amount of travel between the base and the first split. And then, again, flatten these out so you can pull. And then what I do is I let one, this is how I go about this, and then I'll leave myself a little bit to give myself a little bit of a variance there. So this will be your first separation of your trunk. This will be where it's split again. And then you're going to go and you're going to split them again. You're going to divide that into 3, divide that into 3, divide that into 3. Right? So there's number 2.
Next is the Florida scrub pine. These things are everywhere. They grow wild. They are everywhere, and most of them have a very vertical structure, but there's a few that look like they've been sculpted by a Japanese tree master. They're absolutely gorgeous. So that's more of what I'm going to focus on, but understanding how the trunk is formed is important. So this has a vertical trunk, but they usually split in a horizontal and have a branch structure very similar to this. So let's take a look at how that looks compared to the other ones. So it has more of a zigzag shape to the trunk.
All right, now I went a little crazy because I want to build, make it a stupid pine tree. So I used an entire spool, which is 30 yards. So there's 30 yards of wire in this one. The other ones were split, so they're not nearly as long. But I want a lot of branches. I want a big trunk, and this is at where it stands right now is 13 inches. So this was roughly 28 inches when I did the loom. If you remember how I did that from this first video, this was 28 inches. So this is probably going to be a 6-7 inch tall, which isn't that out of the realm. It's going to be a 60-65 foot pine tree, which is a big one, but they grow that big. So your first split, again, this is a little bit tougher. And sometimes you'll miss a cut every once in a while. Gotta go back and cut, especially when you have a big spool. All right, so first split is going to be 1/3. And you're going to get a lot of little stragglers, especially with your larger pieces. Just fine, just wrap it around. So again, we're going to cover all this stuff with modeling paste. Right. Now, I'm not going to get too far with this. But I want this one to go up a little bit further. Because pines always have, especially the really gnarly ones, they'll have, they'll been through hurricanes and storms and lightning or whatever, and they'll get pretty hammered and beat up. So I'll twist this on my camera. It's a little tough. Okay. Back. And that's what we want. So at this point, I'm going to stop because I want to do these trees individually. I want to focus on the pine for being a pine. So that'll be part 3 or part 4 or 5, whichever one it is. The Melaluca being a Melaluca, and the oak being an oak. And in those, we'll finish them up. But I wanted to get through this part. So this is the understanding part. This is learning how to get the look. So if you can get this far, next time we'll finish the trees. But I'm going to do them in individual ones. I want to focus on each species. Do one video for one species, one video for another one video for another one. Anyway, thanks for following along, and hope you come back for the rest. Thanks.